We use AutoCAD and other software programs to help us create construction documents more efficiently and more accurately than doing everything by hand. That means that whatever we draw or design on the computer must have a way to be shown on paper. That is where printing or plotting comes in. AutoCAD calls printing plotting and plotting printing. It comes from the way lines and arcs are drawn on the board. They were plotted. A drafter would plot points and connect the dots with a straight edge. The term stuck, especially when pen plotters were used. Nowadays, we use inkjet printers and laser printers for most of our plotting needs. Believe it or not, printing and AutoCAD drawing can be very difficult to get exactly right. The reason for that is that there are so many settings involved and ways to plot it can get confusing. Also throw into the mix the number of different plotters and printers out there and adding in their own settings, and a CAD user has a real mess to deal with. This video will stay away from settings for specific printers and focus on the AutoCAD settings because that's really all I can do. I don't know what printer you're using. Now, there are 4 main settings to keep in mind when plotting a drawing: the printing device, the paper size, the area to be printed, and the scale to be printed at. So let's open up some files for this chapter. Let's open up the Architectural Annotation Scaling and Multi-Liters drawing file. So if we open up this drawing, we take a look at it, and we go to the Sections and Details Paper Space tab. This drawing is set up to print to a 24-inch by 36-inch size sheet of paper. Well, how do I know that? Well, if I go to the Paper Space tab, I right-click on it and go to Page Setup Manager. This is where you'll go to set up your printing settings. And it tells me right here, plot size, 36 by 24 inches, landscape mode. Now you can print from anywhere and at any size, meaning that you can print from model space or from paper space. I suggest that you set up your drawing to be printed from paper space. There are several ways to start the printing process. You can just press Ctrl-P, and that will open up your printing settings. You can type in the word plot. You can even type in the word print. In AutoCAD, they mean the same things. You can come up to the Quick Access toolbar, click on the plot button right there. Or if you go to the application menu, you can go down to the print button, and you have several different options. If you click on the plot button, again, that brings you to the plot menu. And you can also right-click on the Paper Space tab and click on the plot button. Any of these methods will be fine and they'll get you to the exact same place. Now, as you can see here, there are several different settings. In fact, there are more here than what you see right now. If I click on this little arrow here, it brings up a whole nother section of settings that you can get to. You're probably seeing now why it may be so complicated to print. Now, as you can see here, there are several settings, and page setup is a predetermined set of settings that allow you to print a specific way. All you'll have to do is set it up, and then once you do, you come and you click it, and all of your settings are applied, and you can just click OK. You're going to do that often. In fact, the majority of the time, you're going to be printing from a page setup. It just saves a lot of time. And exactly where you're going to print to is determined here by the printer or plotter. As you can see, there are several different choices here. Now, AutoCAD comes with several output device settings, like a PDF file or a JPEG or a DWF. We will look at exporting the image files in a different section, so we'll get to that later. But essentially, to print, you're going to come here, find the printer that you have available, and I happen to have an HP OfficeJet Pro printer here, and it will only print to 8.5 by 11 size sheets. It's a small personal printer, desktop printer. So you pick the printer that you want. You also have to pick the paper size that you're going to print to. So you select down here where it says paper size. Pick that, and I have all sorts of different options for my little printer. I'm going to print to a letter size. And this preview right here gives you an idea of how big your printer page is going to be. Now, some settings display the page size like 8.5 by 11, or they'll just call it letter, or 11 by 17, or 24 by 36, or 36 by 24, and so on. Now, in most of these cases, the first number will be the width of my paper. I don't have that example here, except for maybe an 8.5 by 13. So the first number shown will be the width of your paper. So if this was 13 by 8.5, it would be 13 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. So keep that in mind as well. Now this shaded area here is where my print will end up on the paper. You can change here between portrait and landscape so that it will automatically fit to the page. A lot of times the height and the width of your sheet is determined by the hardware or your printer itself, and that can't change. So you'll have to change the landscape and portrait orientations here. This little letter is an indicator of how it's going to look on your sheet. The next setting that you'll have to do is to define the plot area, and that's done right here. Essentially, there are 4 options. Click this little arrow here. You have display, extents, layout, and window. Now there's a 5th option that's not showing up here because this file isn't set that way, and that's printing to view. If I have a saved named view, then I can print to that view as well. Now if I pick display, it will print what we currently see on our screen. So if I can move this window out of the way, so what we see here on the screen is what we're going to print. I rarely use this setting, to be quite honest, because it's very difficult to get right. What you see on the screen and how you interpret that to look is oftentimes different from the way AutoCAD interprets it. So just be careful. You can use it, of course. One setting that I do use often is the extents setting. And you might have noticed that I get a little red line here. That means that when you change your settings and you get a red line on a border, then something isn't fitting in your sheet the way it should be. So that means something won't be able to be printed. It's cutting it off. So when you print to extents, it's just like a zoom extents. It zooms all the way out in that tab, being model space or paper space, and it will zoom out to all of the contents of your page. And then that is what's going to be printed. So it basically prints everything that's in that paper space tab. Layout will print according to your page setup definition, meaning your paper size and printer settings. So the layout will print to an 8.5 by 13, as you see here. And when you're in AutoCAD and you set up your layout, there'll be a faintly dashed line that shows up around your drawing area. This is a good setting to use if you have a defined page size or paper size that you're printing to. And it helps you to control the way it's printed on your sheet, because that dashed line is a sort of guideline. So anything inside this dashed rectangle is what's going to print. So you just line up everything that way. This one's used quite often. And then this last section is window. Now the window allows you to define a printing area within a window selection. So you can use this to pick your entire sheet if you'd like, or pick on the window again, and you can just select a small area in case you want to print one section or view or something inside, just a little bit of something that you want to print out. I'll use window a lot when I'm in model space. You can see here my printing area will fit a little bit more smaller than the larger one, and it's going to fit inside this 8.5 by 13 inch size sheet of paper. Now to the scale and to the plot offset. Plot offset typically is going to stay at 0, 0 all the time. The other option you might want to use is center the plot. That means it's going to take whatever it is you chose to print, whether it be a window, layout, extents, display, and it's going to center it on your sheet of paper. This is another setting you're probably going to use quite a bit. Now the scale. The scale is very important. Typically, you're only going to print 1:1 because you use your scale in your CAD file through your viewports. That controls the scale. And Paperspace is set up as if you were drawing in paper. So everything is scaled in there automatically by default according to how it's going to look on the paper. You define your text size, how it's going to look in paper. So if you want your text to be 1/8 of an inch high, then that's what you set your text to be, 1:1. Drawing 1:1 in AutoCAD is the key, and it keeps everything simplified that way. So typically this is going to be 1:1. Now, in the case here, where I only have an 8.5 by 11 size sheet of paper that I can print to, the letter size, and let's say I want to print the full drawing that I have, extents. It's too big to fit on this size sheet of paper. So I'm going to center it. And once I center it, you see here I have the red border telling me that this is not going to fit. I'm only going to get the middle part of my drawing. Well, if I click the fit to paper, it will scale everything down to fit it on that size sheet. And you can see here the scale has been customized itself. I can get it to be a little bit better fit if I pick the landscape option right here. It rotates it, adjusts the scale accordingly, and now my full-size sheet is going to be printed down and scaled properly to an 8.5 by 11. Now you see the scale is a little off here, so if I try to put a scale on my drawing once I print it out to make measurements, I'm not going to be able to. But if I turn off the fit to paper, I can change my scale here manually. Now you can see it cuts it off a little bit. So my left and right sides are going to be cut off. Now, if that's okay, that works. But I can change it 2 by 2. It's still a little too much. Let's go the opposite direction, 1 to 4. Now it fits in there perfectly, and it's at a nice scale that I can actually work with on paper, and I'm ready to print. All I have to do now is click OK. Now there's another setting that you're going to need to take care of, and that's the plot style table or the pin table. That's up here in the top right. Right now, mine is set to none. Mine is set to use the line thicknesses as defined by the layers. It's all up to you which one you're going to use. Now, if you're in a company, you typically are going to use a file. It's called a CTB file. That's these right here. And you will have set those up according to your company's needs and desires. It will say, okay, a red color is really thick. And it will say a blue color is really thin, or whatever colors that you want to use. That will control that. The nice thing about that is that it will force the entire company to use the same colors for printing. So that if I draw with a red line and my colleagues draw with a red line, that red line will always come out to be the same. And so we can work together and we understand each other. We know what each other is doing and how it's going to look visually when we print it out. Otherwise, if you set this to none, you'll just control the thicknesses by the layers. The nice thing about doing that is I know my drawing is going to look this way, and I don't have to depend on an external file or an extra file to control my print settings. Now, the downside is that in this drawing, I could be drawing red as thick, and in the next drawing, I could be drawing red as a thin line. It's inconsistent that way. One is not superior to the other. One is not better than the other. One is not preferred to the other. It just depends on your settings. If you're working by yourself, it really doesn't matter what you do. Do whichever way you're more comfortable with. But when you're working with others, it makes a lot of sense to use the CTB files. A lot of these other plot options that we have here is plot and background. The nice thing about this, if it's turned on, is that AutoCAD will process the printing part and then send it, and will do all that in the background, allowing you to continue working in your AutoCAD file while it's doing that. The drawback to it is that it takes a lot longer to actually print your drawing. I usually keep that off because I need these things printed out quickly, and it just slows it down so much that it really doesn't help. But a lot of times it will. If you have to keep working and the printing speed is not detrimental to you, then you can turn that on. The plot object line weights. This will plot the line weights according to the objects themselves or to the layers. Plotting transparency. You can apply transparency to objects through Layer Manager or through your objects, and if you turn this on, it will plot that. I've found a lot of times that the transparency settings don't work so well with very specific printers. Sometimes they just have a hard time with it, and it's hit or miss. But it's something that I suggest you look into using because it can help you by giving you another layer of control visually for your drawings. This one will plot with the plot styles, that are these settings here. This will plot paper space last. That means that it puts the model geometry first. So it prints that out, processes that first, then it puts the paper space on top of it. That's typically what you want to do. It's a behind the scenes setting that's really a legacy setting from old pin plotters that's still there. You can really turn this off or on, and it won't make that much of a difference when you print, but I suggest you leave it on. You can hide paper space objects, you can turn on a plot stamp, and you can save these changes to the layout whenever you print. I suggest you leave this off, and I do suggest you create a plot stamp. That will help you out quite a bit. And then when you're finished, just click OK, and everything will print out. Preparing a drawing for plotting requires specifying many settings and options that define the output of your drawing. To save time, you can save these settings in what's called the named page setup. You can establish and apply a named page setup to paper space layouts using the Page Setup Manager. Let's open up the Architectural Annotation Scaling and Multi-Leader example file. So to start, we're going to make a new layout tab. To do that, just right-click on the layout tabs and click New Layout. That will create a tab called Layout 1. Page name is fine for right now. So let's activate that tab by clicking on it. Just go to it. And we have a viewport already set up. Now let's go to the Page Setup Manager. It's real easy to get to. Just go down to your Layout tab and right-click on it and go to Page Setup Manager. Now this window allows you to either pick a page setup already in the drawing or make a new one. Any names that you see down here with asterisks on it, as we have here layout and sections and details, are Paperspace tabs. Any others that you'll see can actually be assigned to it. Right now we don't have any page setups in here. So in order to use our page setups, we're going to have to create a new one. So click on the New button. Let's give this a name. I'm just going to call it Page Setup Example. Now what you want to do with the names is give it a name that defines or describes what's going on. So if you're printing a black and white 8.5 by 11, give it a name similar to that. Keep them short, but make sure they're clear and well defined so that anyone using them knows and understands exactly what it is you're trying to do with that page setup. So give it a name, click OK. Now we just go through all of the settings just like we would when we were normally printing. So I'm going to pick my printer first. Since I only have one real printer to choose from, I'm going to pick it. And this gives me a warning. It says, hey, my page size is too big, and I realize that. I'm clicking OK, and it gives a description of what's going on here. Now I'm going to pick letter size for my paper size, and I want to pick extents. I want it to center the plot, and I want it to fit to the page. When you're ready, click on this preview. And the preview button will show you exactly what it's going to look like. See, that fits everything into an 8.5 by 11 size sheet. Works perfectly for me. Now I can zoom in and out with my scroll wheel. I can also pan with my scroll wheel. Or if I right click, I can get to pan and zoom, or zoom window, or zoom original. Or when I'm finished, I just click exit. Now when everything else is okay, make sure my portrait and landscape is set up. I'm not going to use a CTB file. Everything else here looks good. I'm going to click OK. And now my page setup has been created, and now I can apply it to this Paperspace tab. So what I do is I select it, and I hit the Set Current button. Now when you do that, you'll see here it says Layout 1, and in parentheses it has the name of the page setup. That means it's been assigned to this Paperspace tab. This Paperspace tab does not have a page setup at all. That's okay. I'm going to create one more. So I'm going to select New. Now you notice that I selected this page setup before I clicked New. This works just like it does in any of the other style creations, dimensions, text, etc. It will copy these settings, and then I'll just be able to tweak it however I want. Well, I'm going to call this PDF 24 by 36 because that's what I'm going to create. With this page setup, my drawings will be printed not to paper, but to a PDF file, and it will be full size 24 by 36. So I'm going to click OK. AutoCAD by default and out of the box comes with several settings. I have some programs that I use like Snagit, OneNote, and Nitro PDF Creator that will allow me to print to those file types. Also, you have a Microsoft XPS document writer. You should have that if you're running Windows, which you should be. If you have a fax printer set up or your default Windows printer, you can print to those types of files. AutoCAD itself comes with settings to print to a DWF file, a DWFX, a PDF, a JPEG, or a PNG file. And that are these options here. So instead of it sending the document to a piece of paper, it sends it to one of these electronic file types. So this is a great way to share your drawings via email. Well, I'm going to use the DWG to PDF file. I have a lot of options here available to me. Now this is an architectural D size drawing, a 36 by 24 size sheet. Now you see I have two options here, 36 by 24 and then 24 by 36. Well, this drawing is a 36 by 24 in reality. It's 36 wide, 24 tall. And the first number in your AutoCAD printing is what's going to be the width. So that's what I'm going to pick, 36 by 24. Now I'm still set as the drawing to extents, and this is set to center. This is set to fit to paper. I'm going to turn that off, change my units to 1, and you can see here this drawing is not really set up to be printed to that size. And you're going to find out that this happens to you quite often, where you think it's set up to be a certain way, but it really isn't. If I hit a preview, you can see how small that is. What's happening here is that this Paperspace tab is set up to be 8.5 by 11. And that's okay, because I'm not going to apply it to this Paperspace tab. I'm going to apply it to this other one. So I am going to set up to layout 1:1. Now it's going to be 24 by 36 when I use this setting. I'm going to click OK. And now it's here as an option available to me. I'm going to click close. I'm going to go to this Paperspace tab. I'm going to right click on it and go to my Page Setup Manager. And for this Paperspace tab, I'm going to select my PDF 24 by 36, pick the Set Current, and click Close. Remember I talked about that dashed line? Here it is right there. That's the dashed line. So I'm going to have to reposition my viewport and my other drawing objects here to make sure it fits inside my sheet. So I'm using the Move command, selecting everything. Now they have these little guidelines here in this drawing, so I'm going to try to use that. You can see the white paper is right here. That also gives me a guide as to my paper size. Now you can't snap to any of those points, so you just got to kind of eyeball it. Printing can take a while, so to help us out, we can use page setups. Once they're set, we can publish several drawings at once. It allows us to print more than one drawing at a time. Now the best part is that you don't have to open up all of the drawings or really open up any of them. You just assign them to a list, go to the Publish Manager, and tell it to do its job. We have the Publish Manager inside AutoCAD. You can open up while you're in any file and have it print any tab from any drawing, regardless if you have it opened or not. This is one of the reasons we use CAD. So let's start by just opening up a blank template file. And to get to the publisher, just type in the word publish. That will bring up the Publish Manager. Now you can also get to it through the application menu. Go to the Publish option here and just click on Publish. It opens up the same thing. Now, by default, when you open up Publish Manager, it will automatically load the current file into your publishing list in order to print it out. I'm going to remove these. You just select them, and then you click on this minus sign. You can also right-click and say Remove. Now, if you want to add files, click on this green plus sign right here, and let's add the architectural annotation, architectural example file, color wheel, and the dimension example. So you just hold down the Shift key and select each one. They'll be shown in the list here. And it asks you if you want to include model and layout. I just want to include the layout or the Paperspace tabs. Click the select button and they will automatically be added to your list right here. Now, if you have a page set up in each of these files, that will be added to it right here. You see here it says default none, so we'll need to set some up in those files. If I select right here, this will bring up an arrow where I can go and find a page set up in that file and assign it and use it. So if you don't have your page setup assigned to that specific tab, but you do have some in the files, you can use them. Now, if you don't have any, you can go to the Import button here, browse to a file that has the right page setup, and use that one. When I click on the Publish button, it will print each one of these files in this order. So if I don't like the order, if I want my color wheel to come up first, I just select it, and then I can come up to this button here, and it will move it up, or it will move it down in the proper order. Or if I click and hold, I can just drag it up or down. If I need to print more than one set of these drawings, more than one copy, I can come down here and tell it 1, 2, 3, however many I want to print out, which is fantastic. And it will automatically collate these for you. Now you can choose the publish in background option. You can choose to put in a plot stamp. If you're plotting to a PDF or DWF, if you click this button, it will automatically open up the file when you are done creating your published document. If you're just printing to your printer, there's nothing to open up, so that won't affect it in any way. You can save your list that you make. So if I say, yes, I like all of these files here, and I am going to need to print them again because it's a project, click on this little save icon, and I save the list as a DSD file. And I'll save it somewhere with my project files so that all I'll have to do is load it in later on. In fact, let's show you. If I select this here, I'm going to browse to my project folder. I'm going to call this project files and click save. So now this is saved. If I were to remove all of these, and the next time I want to work with those, print them out, I just come here to the load sheet list, browse to where it is, select it, click load. That's fine. It tells me, hey, there's a conflict. It's going to change the settings. That's okay. And it's going to load it up for me, and I'm ready to go. I just hit publish and I'm ready to print. So that's really nice. It's a big time saver. There are a lot of things that you can do to help yourself out. Now, if you don't want to print to paper, but you want all of these to print to a PDF, you come up to here, publish to the plotter, to DWF, DWFX, or a PDF. Once you do that, the number of copies obviously is grayed out. It's only going to make one. Now you have some precision here, and this just depends on your settings. Typically, I go with none. I don't need to be that precise with some of my settings. And I can print and go. Now I have other options right here. So if I click on the publish options, I can tell it where to save this file at. I can tell it if it's a multi-sheet file or if it's going to be a single sheet. Now the difference there is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drawings. I can put them all into one PDF file, or I can make each one of them a single PDF file, one for each drawing. One isn't better than the other. It just depends on what you need. Typically, if I have a set of drawings, I need to send the entire set to whomever it is, a client, a city, municipality, whatever it is. And I will typically print these to a multi-sheet file. That way it's only one PDF file and they have all the drawings in the set. I can prompt for a file name, or I can specify it right here if I'd like. I can include layer information or not, and I can password protect. Now, there are many ways to output your CAD drawing. One is to print to paper. The other is to output it to an image file. Many people use PDF files to share documents electronically. In fact, it's extremely common. AutoCAD can do that. It can also plot to JPEG files, PNG files, and DWF or DWFX files. JPEG and PNG are simply image files that can be edited by programs like Photoshop. A DWF or DWFX file are image files from Autodesk that AutoCAD can reference and work with, especially with other software like Autodesk Design Review. Regardless of which file type you want to export to, the process is exactly the same. In fact, we've already gone through some of this in the plotting section of this video, so you can already do this. Let's open up an example file here. Let's look at the dimension example. In this drawing, we have several Paperspace layout tabs. Let's go to print one, use the plot command, press enter. And what we're going to do is set this up to print to a PDF. So I can create a page setup, or I could just print it to PDF right through here. What you're going to do is you go to your printer plotter, find the name, change the settings, you click on the arrow, and you scroll down until you find the option of DWG to PDF.PC3. Pick up your paper size, your plot area, everything else like you normally would. Click Preview. This is what it's going to look like. Right-click Exit. If I want everything to be black and white, I can just go to Grayscale or Monochrome for my CTB file. Click on the preview, and that's perfect. Right-click Exit, and then click OK. Find the location for my file, where you want to save it at. I'm going to call it dimension example, dimension.pdf, that's fine. And I'm going to click Save. And once you finish printing, you get this little bubble up that says Plot and Publish Job Finished. And then it opens it up, because I had that setting turned on, to my PDF viewer, whatever program you use. Now this is great because I can send this to anybody. They don't have to have AutoCAD or an AutoCAD file viewer. They just need a PDF reader, and that can be anything. In fact, a lot of web browsers themselves can just read PDF files. So the PDF file type is a universal type that has been adopted by almost everybody, really, as a way to exchange drawings. The other great thing about this is you don't have to worry about any type of specific AutoCAD settings to print it out. So this is the way it's going to look when you print it out on paper, and that's fantastic. So it removes a lot of guesswork from the printing process for non-AutoCAD users. Now, if I want to print to DWF or JPEG or anything else like that, I go through the exact same process. And instead of picking the PDF, I just find what it is I want to print to. And this is the DWF 6E plot. This is the DWFX. And again, you've seen the PDF. This is published to JPEG, published to PNG. Make all of your regular settings just like you normally would. Click OK, and there you go. That is the best way to get a good quality digital file version DWG file type. This process translates your AutoCAD file into a digital file that is universal, that can be read by anybody with almost any type of software that they already have. Well, we've come a long way so far. This is the last step that we're going to take before we go into our final project. So for this chapter project, we're going to get our project template set up and ready to print and create a few layout tabs for us. So let's open up our project template file. And I'm going to save as so that I keep that one for you the way it looked in that chapter, and so that we have something to start with in this chapter. I'm going to overwrite my file that I already have. So this way you'll have something to start with, and we will both be working from exactly the same file. I'm also going to save a final version of this so you have a before and after of what it's going to look like. So we already have a Paperspace tab in here, and it has a title block border in it with the viewport, and that's great. We're going to leave that because we'll use it. But I want to rename this. This says it's a D-size layout, but that's okay. I'm going to rename it and call it Dimension. Now let's do a page setup. I'm going to make a page setup for a PDF. So we right-click on the Paperspace tab, go to the Page Setup Manager. There are already a few page setups in here, but none that go to PDF. So that's what I want to make. So I select the New button, and I'm going to call it PDF, since that's what it's going to do. Click OK. Now for my printer name, I need to make sure I select the DWG to PDF PC3 file. And since this is a D-size drawing, I'm going to leave it at the 24x36 setting. I'm going to set the plot area to extents 1:1. Click my preview, and that looks perfect. The entire border is inside there. So right-click, exit, click OK. I'm going to set this one current. Now I'm going to take a risk here, and if you get lost, that's okay. But I'm going to make a page setup for my printer. That way, we'll kind of go through the process for you so you can set it up to your printer as well. I'm clicking New, and I'm going to call this one Print. Click OK. Now instead of the DWG to PDF, I'm going to scroll up until I find my printer. That's my printer right here. This is where it will be different for you. make sure you pick your printer, whatever it might be. If you don't have one, that's okay. You can kind of skip over this part. Now I got a warning because my paper size that my printer can print to is too small for my current settings. I'm going to set it to a letter size. Now I do want it set to extents so that I get all of the line work. I do want it centered, but instead of a 1:1 scale, I'm going to set it to fit to paper. I know it's going to be out of scale. That's okay. I just want to fill up the paper as much as I possibly can. Select my preview, and it's all in there. Right click, exit, click OK. I'm not going to set that as my default. I'm setting my PDF as my default. Now that I'm finished, clicking close. Now we're ready to start our drawing, and we're ready to print when we're finished. And if I need to make new layout tabs or paper space tabs in the future when I go to work on my drawings, I can, and I already have 2 different page setups ready to go to print them out. I'll just have to apply it to it. And now we're ready. So we've gone through and we've created a file. We have a title block in here that we can use and fill out. We have layers set up, dimension styles, text styles. We have a page set up so we're ready to print and ready to go. All we need to do now is to create our model.